Consumer's just so fickle. I came out of consumer. I was working in games, worked at a couple of companies that we made games off the back of the Facebook platform. The biggest exit I was involved with, the execution was no better than some of the companies I was involved with or started myself that didn't have those big outcomes. And so I felt like I had a skill set that added a lot of value and I was just very interested in. But I felt like a lot of the outcome was kind of beyond execution. It was a lot of timing, a little bit of luck, maybe a lot of bit of luck. And spending 4 years at these companies, that's a big investment to make. So I wanted to find somewhere that matched my interests and what I thought I was decent at with kind of putting more of the outcome within kind of the execution realm.
Jason, welcome to Tech Scenes Unplugged.
Thank you, Jeff. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. So let's start from the top. Tell me about Camber Partners.
Sure. So Camber Partners is a private equity fund. We're investing out of our first fund. It's a $100 million fund. And we're investing in a small, say sub $15 million ARR PLG SaaS companies. So it's a control strategy, very concentrated. We'll have 5 companies in fund 1 and 7 or 8 in fund 2. And we're really focused on helping our portfolio companies operationally. So we've got a pretty big operations team for a private equity fund, especially of our size. And we really kind of sit hand in hand with the teams improving their use of data, their product-led sales, their ability to attract talent, and how they market their products.
Yeah. So PLG, product-led growth. It's something some people know about, some people don't. Your background has been steeped in this for a long time. And I think when I talk to you about it, I think you think everybody knows what that is and how that works. But it is a difference between hiring a huge sales force to go sell your product versus having your product actually sell itself, right?
Yes, and we use a lot of acronyms. So if I start using acronyms you're not familiar with, please call me out. Happy to explain. So the way that we define product-led growth is that a customer's or a prospective customer's first engagement is with the product itself. And so that could be through a 14-day free trial. It could be through a freemium offering, but you're really kind of driving demand inbound and you're engaging them with the product. And you might have a light sales touch to help kind of get customers over the finish line and subscribe to the service. But the product is doing a lot of the heavy lifting on demand generation, getting engagement with the product, and ultimately kind of selling the customer, keeping them engaged and expanding. And you contrast that with sales-led, where if you go to a website, they're driving you to a demo. So they're trying to engage you with a salesperson. Oftentimes there's a big outbound component to those business models. And the real difference for us is with PLG, you tend to deal with really big funnels. So you're driving a lot of top of funnel traffic from SEO, from PPC, and a number of other sources. And that's kind of a high velocity, kind of a big numbers problem to solve. Whereas, for a sales-led model, outbound kind of big ticket items, you have to build a big sales team to create that demand. In the PLG model, you're more meeting the demand with salespeople. So it's much more capital efficient, much more predictable, which we like. And you're not counting on a sales rep bringing in, an enterprise deal on the last day of a quarter to make or break the quarter. So it's very predictable, and that's what we tend to like about it.
Yeah, it's almost like the sales process is part of the product or is a product process.
Yeah, and a lot of this comes out of consumer. So obviously, if you're at Spotify, you can't put a sales rep on trying to close a $14 a month subscription.
Right.
So, before PLG was kind of the moniker that people called this, there were a bunch of different names that, people described this business model, which was, pioneered by companies like Dropbox and Slack and folks like that. But one of the things they called it was like the consumerization of SaaS, because a lot of the go-to-market um, strategies and tactics come out of consumer where you don't really have a choice and could, never build a sales team and make that math work.
Right. Right. And then why PLG for Camber? Like, why did you guys go that direction first? I mean, I know your background's in that, but what's the thesis around that?
So, like you said, my background comes out of consumer. Moved over to PLG probably 7 or 8 years ago. My co-founder and partner Scott, he had a really successful track record investing in PLG companies like Dropbox, PandaDoc, and Pipedrive have all been very successful, kind of scaled PLG companies. So we both approached it from really an interest standpoint. So Scott really liked the predictability of that business model, the capital efficiency of that model. I just liked it coming out of consumer because you get to leverage a lot of data science, a lot of experimentation. It's very execution oriented. And so we both we met back in 2001 in the Bay Area and have kept in touch ever since. And we both kind of came to this love of PLG from kind of different disciplines. And when we decided to get together and do something around PLG, the opportunity that we saw was that there's a lot of teams out there building great products. So, most founding teams, it's product people, engineers, they usually feel the problems that their customers are facing. And so they can build really great products. Um, but a lot of the challenge in really scaling one of these businesses is nailing the go-to-market side. There's a lot
Right.
of nuance. There's a lot of expertise that, if you're in a major tech hub, you've got access to the capital, you've got access to, folks who have done this multiple times. We're investing around the world, and, a bootstrapped founder in Eastern Europe doesn't necessarily have all of those things. So we realized, great products, challenges on the go-to-market side or opportunities on the go-to-market side they're not taking advantage of. And we could build an operating team of people who have done this multiple times. We could bring that to those founders and we could reaccelerate the growth of those businesses. So, we didn't set out to create a PE firm, but we saw that opportunity and saw that this was going to need to be a very concentrated strategy because we spend a lot of time with our portfolio companies, and that's where a control position, like we just need to have more equity per company to basically make the math work.
Yeah. So what is it that you guys look for when you're making an investment in these companies? What are the kind of key drivers?
Yeah, great question. So it all starts with a well-loved product. So we can help with go to market. If the product isn't great, there's not much we can do about it. Well-loved product, it needs to be in a market that's interesting and will command good multiples when we go to sell the business or sell our stake in the business. We're very focused on the market. We love to work with good teams, and we really are looking for, can what we've built on the operating side really augment what they're doing to really kind of compound the impact. So a good
Right.
example is a deal we did in Eastern Europe. Really strong on the marketing side. They had a great product in a market that we liked. They had a really good marketing team, but they had some challenges around net revenue retention. So basically, how much past cohort of customers is paying you today, and it's kind of a foundational metric for value creation, and a key growth lever. And they were suffering from kind of below benchmark net revenue retention, and you see that a lot in product led growth because you don't have a sales team qualifying each lead, right? And
Yep.
so you have
Yep.
people that are just coming to your website. They sign up, they put in a credit card, maybe they understand what you're doing and really have that need. Maybe they're just, choosing to pay because they want to try the product for, a longer time period and it's only $40 a month. And so you get a lot of people who churn early, or maybe they have like just a short-term need for the
Yep.
product, but not ongoing. And so all of that can really cloud the picture around some of these product-led growth companies because you are, churning a high percentage of customers short term for those reasons and a number of other ones. And so this team, what we loved about it is they were very focused on A/B testing. They had a big funnel. Like there's a lot of data that, if unlocked, we could really leverage. And we leveraged our data science team and our data platform to really get them focused on the quality of revenue, which is a lot harder than it sounds. It's for these kind of high volume PLG companies. And then we were able to leverage their horsepower on the marketing side, their experimental nature and all the A/B tests they're running. But instead of just focusing on getting more revenue in the door today, it's get more quality revenue in the door. And so we're able to kind of swap out what that North Star metric is, leverage their strengths on experimentation. And, that's just ultimately going to improve the net retention, make growth a lot easier, and increase the overall enterprise value of the business, excuse me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's kind of interesting how you guys are looking at this too, is because you're trying to identify the challenges that they have and provide this value that you can bring and make those opportunities of the pieces that you have. So are you calling those like centers of excellence, or how do you refer to those pieces that you guys have built?
We do call them centers of excellence. I don't love that moniker. It sounds very corporate, and we're very small and very scrappy, but we haven't come up with anything better than that.
So, capabilities?
Yeah, centers of excellence gives us a little more gravitas. But we've got 3 of them right now. So we've got a great data science team, and we've built a proprietary data platform that is built multi-tenant, and all of our portfolio companies plug into, and that's really the foundation of our engagement. We've got a product-led sales center of excellence down in Austin, Texas. So one of the kind of surprising challenges that many of these companies face is that when you've got a product-led growth business and it starts out largely with self-service, layering a sales team into that is a lot harder than it sounds. So, most of the founders that we talk to, they've brought in a sales leader from a competitor in the market, but unless it's kind of a PLG competitor, like the sales DNA and the expectations and the cultures really tend to clash. So a lot of these companies have struggled to layer sales, which is a requirement to really scaling these companies to be big. They have a lot of false starts and have a lot of scars on their back around trying to integrate sales into their company. And so down in Austin, we will actually incubate the sales teams on behalf of the portfolio companies, usually for the first maybe 9 to 12 months. And so we build out the CRM, we will recruit, train, manage, kind of build all of those playbooks, get that team to say 5 or 6 productive reps, and then we'll hire a VP of sales into the portfolio company. And then we can hand over very much de-risked team. And then they can focus on hiring somebody who's really good at scaling sales teams versus kind of trying to find a unicorn who can do all of the kind of dirty work and scale it as you get to 10, 20 million in ARR.
I've seen this over and over again with companies I worked with where they fail over and over again. They're a PLG company. They're trying to bring the salesperson in. The person, they're like, oh, he's a savior to the company, bring them in, and then they fail. And they've had previous success, but what they're missing is that they haven't layered in this appropriately. They haven't been PLG type sales before. So what is it that you think is typically broken, or what's not working, or what's the friction? And then maybe what's the process to do that right?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the biggest challenges is PLG is largely, especially in the early days, is a marketing challenge. How are you driving leads to your website? So that's on the go-to-market side of things. That is usually the early investment. And if you're getting to 5-10 million in ARR, you're probably doing a pretty good job on that. Sales is, especially for, lower ASP deals, lower average selling price deals, sales can be, really kind of junior, early career sellers, because you could be selling, monthly subscriptions for $100 a month. So you can't have, some salesperson out of Oracle trying to do, like a bunch of selling. It's much more of a sales assist.
Right. There's
And
no
so,
margin there if you're hiring an
yeah,
expensive
yeah,
person to sell
the
inexpensive
math,
products.
exactly. The math doesn't work at all. And so, marketing has been focused and primarily responsible for revenue. And if you bring somebody in from a sales led company, sales is usually tasked with driving demand. So the outbound, is a primary channel. There's a lot more selling going on because I'm reaching out to you. Maybe you've got a need, but you haven't been spending a lot of time thinking about it. You didn't go through all the work of doing a Google search, going to G2 to review vendors in that space, trying a bunch of different products. So there's a lot more selling to do in the sales led model. And in a lot of those businesses, sales is kind of the top dog, and marketing is doing a lot of sales enablement, creating a lot of materials, and it's kind of the inverse. So if you bring in, somebody who's used to marketing being in support of sales into an environment where marketing has kind of primarily been driving revenue, you get a lot of cultural issues. And to your point earlier, usually that sales led person coming out of a bigger competitor in the space, they're going to come to the CEO, and in their interview, they're going to say, "You're not doing outbound? Like, outbound works great for us. Like, we're going to be
Right.
able to turn this on in no time." And outbound's really hard to make work until you've in the PLG world, until you've gotten, say, north of 10 million of ARR, and then you've kind of built some brand equity and you're known, and the outbound will start to work a little bit better. So
Hmm.
you've got a sales leader coming in saying, "I'm going to open up this new channel." You're a bootstrapped founder who's never had a sales team. That sounds awesome. It rarely works in practice, and it's going to take 6 to 12 months to find out that this doesn't work, and there's
Right.
going to be a lot of brain damage and cultural challenges that you face along the way, and that really causes founders to retreat from sales. And usually a lot of companies we invest in, we've got one or two sales reps, and they're adding value, but the foundation isn't there to really scale that and make that a big lever for the
Right.
business.
I've come into teams a few different times where they did that and they're kind of drained. And
Yeah.
the CEO is thought is like, hey, we tried to go big a couple times, it didn't work. And
Mhm.
so I'm fine kind of staying at where we're at in this incremental growth. And then when I see that sometimes, hearing those stories, I can see where they come, where that's coming from. But then there's times where I look at that and say, I think it's just maybe it wasn't the right strategy or it wasn't
Mhm.
executed in the right way. And there's a lot of opportunity. I find a lot of PLG companies also going that channel partner route. A lot of
Mhm.
times when you have like a good product that's selling itself, going those channel partner routes and being part of a channel system works really well too. Have you seen that, or have you done
Yeah.
anything around channels?
So we think about it more about ecosystems versus channels, because and I'm old, so when I think about channels, I think about like VARs and resellers and stuff like
Right.
that, and that usually doesn't really work in PLG. But the ecosystems and the marketplaces, of like, if you integrate into ERPs or CRMs, really
Right.
leveraging those channel partners, those ecosystems, because they all have
Yep.
marketplaces, and you can partner with them to get some co-marketing and build case studies and stuff like that. So those integration ecosystems are, definitely a big opportunity for a lot of product-led growth companies.
Right. And that's tricky. And that's a different type of person to hire as well, that understand channels and channel
It
partner
is, and it's
management.
also, marketing can handle a lot of that. Like, you're not going out and selling in the same way that kind of pre SaaS was able to do that back in the 2000s and early 2010s.
Getting on flights with each other and going to sales meetings together doesn't happen as
Not
much anymore.
not a lot of flights in the PLG world.
Yeah. So when we first met, you were at When I Work. What was that
Mhm.
experience like? And what kind of work did you do there?
Yeah. So When I Work was my first PLG business. So I came out of consumer. I was working um, in games. So worked at a couple of companies that we made games off the back of the Facebook platform. And so kind of cut my teeth in the consumer world. And I, like I said earlier, like, I loved the big funnels and leveraging experimentation and data science to build products that, attracted customers, engaged customers, monetized customers. And what I struggled with was that consumers just so fickle that the biggest exit I was involved with, like the execution was no better than some of the companies I was involved with or started myself that didn't have those big outcomes. And so I felt like I had a skill set that added a lot of value. I felt like, and I was just very interested in. But I felt like a lot of the outcome was kind of beyond execution. It was a lot of timing, a little bit of luck, maybe a lot of bit of luck, and spending 4 years at a pop at these companies, that's a big investment to make. So I wanted to find somewhere that kind of matched my interests and what I thought I was decent at, with kind of putting more of the outcome within kind of the execution realm. And so that's when um, PLG was really emerging, and I thought the skill set that I had would be applicable. So at the same time, my wife and I and our two boys were moving back from the Bay Area to Minneapolis, which is where we're both from originally. And so I got connected to the guys at When I Work, and um, you know, it was a good fit. So I went in there and I built a growth team, and eventually took over marketing and data science, and brought a lot of that kind of consumer mindset and kind of consumer playbook to When I Work, which makes scheduling software for hourly workers. You know, massive funnel. Relatively low average selling price. So it had a lot of the same attributes of a consumer company. So went there. Think I had a positive impact
Oh,
there. I was
yeah.
with them from about 12 to 25 million of ARR before I left to co-found Camber, and they went on to do great and spend a great investment for everybody.
Well, I remember when I was over there, I spent a lot of time with Chad, and he's like, "Hey, there's this new guy, and you have to meet him. His name's Jason. He's like building out all this stuff, things that we didn't think about before. Like, we're so excited that he came back to the Twin Cities, so we get to work with him." And I remember sitting down with you and like, wow, I haven't seen someone that actually has your skill set in the Midwest that much, and the fact that had the opportunity to spend some time in the Bay and learn from a lot of companies doing that type of work, I think was huge. The other story I have about Chad, and I reflect on this a lot. So in my world of building an operating system for venture-backed companies, tech
Mm-hmm.
companies, highly cross-functional growth companies, call it what you want, basically companies doing things that haven't been done before. I remember specifically, and it's probably about a decade ago, is that Chad was looking at EOS traction. And I was very familiar with EOS and Gazelles and other systems out there. And he's like, yeah, I had, this one person come in. Peyton was probably one of the biggest EOS guys. And I was like, great. I think that I'm excited for you guys to see what you can do with that. And he's like, I decided not to do it. And I'm like, why? Like, he's one of the best guys out there. And he's like, well, they don't want to, we want to use OKRs. Like, OKRs speak our
Mm-hmm.
tech language and speak to
Yeah.
investors, and people know what they are and we want to use them. And then I reversed back, to Peyton, and I said, oh, I heard that you were talking to Chad. And he's like, yeah, the system doesn't work exactly for those types of companies with boards.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit different. It's not really
Yep.
built for that. And that was right around the time that my friend Ryan Brosher, who's also in the Twin Cities, was like, Jeff, you need to really just focus on building an operating system for these types of companies.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had already done a lot of the work and was actually doing sessions with companies already that were in tech all the way back then. But it's still, it feels like it was the same day that all that happened. It was probably maybe, weeks, maybe a year apart. But the idea of like, these companies actually need some system, and there isn't an operating system. And every time I walk into a company, we create this new system, like they're homegrown systems every single time, kind of using OKRs or try to use OKRs, have a vision, a mission, kind of have a 1-year plan, but it's actually a budget. And it was like the same
Right.
story over and over and over and over again. A decade plus later, here I have a operating system for venture-backed companies and technology companies. But that was one of those moments in time that I always reflect back on, because When I Work was growing crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was one of the fastest growing companies in the Midwest. And Chad was all over everywhere with his little pencil behind his ear.
Yeah, no, I remember those EOS sessions, and I think we knew a framework of some kind would benefit us, and like I'd never heard of it prior to that, but it just didn't feel like it was built for us. Like it felt like it wasn't aimed at high growth businesses, and it wasn't solving for the challenges that we had at the time. So I think
Mhm.
we all knew that we needed some framework to work with, and it just didn't feel like that was quite right. And so,
Yeah.
no, I completely agree. As we come into portfolio companies, we're big believers in OKRs, and I think just it's having a framework that understands the challenges, realizes the importance of focus, and I think your model and the way that we approach it, it's really about just driving alignment, getting everybody to talk about the priorities and have the hard conversations at
Yep.
the beginning of a quarter. Because if you just list, we're going to do these 40 things, in this quarter, one, it might not be tied to the business outcomes that you want. It kind of just becomes a to-do list,
Yep.
and people are overly optimistic of their ability to accomplish as much as they think they're going to accomplish, in part because they haven't talked about the dependencies, the cross-team dependencies.
Yep.
And so, just having a framework that forces you to have the conversations. What do we need to accomplish in this time period to achieve the business outcomes that we want? Kind
Yep.
of what's in the way, and driving the hard conversations to say, initiative A or initiative B, we don't get to say both because they both require the same resources, and it's
Yep.
unrealistic to get both done this quarter. Which is more important? And it's those conversations where I think the value is kind of the most. And then I think are you talking about these every week? Are you checking
Right.
in? Are you
Yep.
doing a retro on how last quarter went? And are you being thoughtful about the next quarter? And are we getting better at the exercise of setting OKRs? So I think the magic is in forcing those hard conversations that would be easy to ignore, making sure it's tied to the business outcomes that's going to create the outcomes that you want. And then, especially having a third party like you come in and make sure, like, we're scheduling this and we're going to talk about it,
Yep.
and we're going to make sure that we're iterating to get better quarter after quarter. I think it's invaluable.
Well, I think you said it. I think it's easy to not do it because those difficult conversations can sometimes not be that fun,
Right.
right? And but if you organize them in the right way, oftentimes I find the team is in alignment, or
Mm-hmm.
we can find alignment fairly
Yep.
easy if we organize those conversations in the right way. One I think issue with OKRs and how we do peak OKRs a little bit different is a lot of people want to use that key result, create a metric for that to measure their success towards that objective, but we need to have the conversation also of what do we actually need to do to achieve
Mm-hmm.
this objective.
Right.
And I think creating key results, I like to use SMART goals as key results, is like,
Sure.
specific, measurable, attainable,
Mm-hmm.
realistic, and timely of these key results to make sure that we achieve what we need to achieve. If we don't have those conversations, like you said, it's easy not to have those conversations. Then we don't get clarity around what we need to do, how we're going to do it, who's going to do it, when it's going to get done by. And you have that list of things that you wanted to get done that don't get done. And so, yeah, 100%, you and I are in alignment on that topic.
The other thing that I see is people and OKRs, and we've talked about not using the OKR name, basically. Like,
Yeah.
let's do what makes sense, but let's stop calling it OKRs, because people inevitably just get wrapped around the axle around, well, this is a KR, it's not, is it measurable? What's the O supposed to be? No, at Google they do them this way, Andy Grove did them this way, and people just get so, like I said, wrapped around the axle
Yeah.
around kind of definitions. And again, what really matters is, are we prioritizing? Are we driving alignment? And are we holding ourselves accountable? Call them whatever you want.
Yeah.
But that's where people get tripped up. And then I often see, and I think we had this challenge at When I Work, is like, we're doing OKRs. Let's go kind of whole hog on them, and let's have them cascade all the way down to individuals. And, that's trying to sprint before you can crawl. So we
Yeah.
take a very iterative approach. First quarter with the company, drop dead simple, like three objectives, three key results for, each one. That's it. And
Yep.
then let's calibrate. All right. And
Yeah.
how did it go? And how can we get kind of more sophisticated over time? But it's company wide. That's it. And it's just I've seen it happen dozens
Well,
of times where people get just too excited, and it's like getting off the couch after not running, and trying to run a 10K off your couch, and you're probably gonna injure yourself.
well, you nailed the second point that I have with OKRs that we changed and we'll call them peak OKRs is that we do them by layers. Like they don't necessarily cascade down perfectly.
Okay.
Your objective turns into a key result. Now your key result is supposed to be objective, so you create another key result. That just doesn't work. And maybe if you get it to work one quarter, it's not going to work the next quarter. So
Sure.
we like to think of it as a team of teams model. So every team creates their own OKRs, and product creates their own objectives and key results. And we can do that all the way through the organization. When you're smaller, we do the leadership team, and we just do a layer of objectives in each of the functional areas of the business. But the point of OKRs is to create focus amongst the team and individuals. So if you take it a layered approach, then you can have focus within product, focus within,
Sure.
engineering, focus within sales. We do the same thing with the 3-year vision. We have break them out functionally. Top 5 objectives for the 1-year plan, top 3 objectives for the 3-year vision. And those are all functional. So we can anchor the 3-year vision into the 1 year, and the 1 year can anchor into the OKRs. And now we have this nice line of alignment. And that's the other thing is sometimes people are going to cascade them down, and it's not going to work. And taking the team approach, I think works well. And then you create that alignment, and then people can run. Like once you know what you need to do, that's like most important for a CEO is now everybody can run and everybody has visibility on everything. And then you can stop those crazy meetings where we go around in a circle and talk about what we're doing.
Right. And everybody's trying to sound busy and
Yes.
just can't, like you said, I think it's running because I know this is the right direction, and I'm empowered to make decisions because I'm supposed to move this metric or achieve this goal. And as long as I'm focused on that, I don't need to check in with my boss on a daily basis to see whether this is still aligned with where the company is going. So
Right.
I have a question for you. Do you roll that whole thing out to start, or do you normally just start with the leadership team and kind of build complexity over time?
Yeah, so we do the launch session. So anytime a team wants to start, I usually have a call with the CEO. We talk through it, and they're like, all right, let's do this. We'll start with the leadership team. We call it a launch session. I do a prep call with them, teach them the system, give them prep work, and then they have 2 to 3 weeks to actually work with their teams. So they work with their teams to answer the prep questions, which is basically the essence of building that 3-year vision, the 1-year plan, and the next 90-day OKRs. If it's a bigger organization, we might do OKRs on a 180-day cadence. But the importance of that prep call and give them time is so they can work with their teams to answer some of these questions. So we're doing bottoms-up planning.
Okay.
And then when we get to this session, we plug everything in, and then we iterate on that 3-year, iterate on that 1 year, iterate on those OKRs, and actually build out the key results. And then we go back. We have a week. We go back to the teams, share, get more information. Then we come back to the next session. We iterate one more time. So it's a iteration process versus, some of these systems out there. You show up, no prep work, and then all of a sudden you're making all these decisions off the cuff,
Right?
Without information from your team, so they don't feel like they're a part of it. So it's really important. That process, I think, is something that took me a little while to figure out because I did do some of those sessions and go, there's a disconnect here. And so once we roll it out in the leadership team, they'll walk away with a 3-year vision, 1-year plan, OKRs, and then at least functional objectives, objective layer within each functional area to give alignment. Now they can go back to their team. Let's say I'm the head of sales. Here's our 5 objectives. Now I can build out key results with them, if that makes sense. If I'm the head of product and I'm one person and we're just maybe like a 80-person company and there's just maybe 2 product people, we might not create a layer of key results within that one. But I do have some teams where we have leadership team, we have functional areas, we have divisional areas. So each one can take that and do the same process, which is kind of nice. The same model, though, we could go into a large organization in a small division or company and just build it out too. So it works nice with that, which I think some operating systems don't really have that ability to build it out like that.
Which size organization is most interesting to you to engage? You got very different 80-person company versus Fortune 500. What are some of the trade-offs there?
I would say that typically it's companies between about 25 employees and 250 employees.
Okay.
And we focus on companies that are doing things that have never been done before. So,
Hmm.
which we went deep on peak teams with venture backed companies because all of them are all doing something that's never been done before. They wouldn't get financing.
Right.
But I've brought this to, a brewery, to educational institutions, a lot, space foundation, like a lot of different companies that are not venture backed. But the
Yep.
one thing they all have in common is that they're doing something that hasn't been done before. They don't have a blueprint, and that
Sure.
it's taking a bunch of people to achieve these goals. So they're highly cross functional. That said, I've done bigger organizations than 250 as well, but right now we're just trying to stay in that space. I've done publicly traded companies that didn't want the Bain operating system or these large consulting groups because they wanted to
Sure.
focus on growth, and so that was a fun exercise.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Going back to your investing, one of the things that you said that you really look on is like good teams. Like for you as an investor and looking at these companies, and I know you've seen a lot of companies, what is it for you that makes a good team a good team?
It's a great question. There's a lot that goes into it. I think there's obviously like the talent level. Like are
Mm-hmm.
people good at the functional areas that they need to be good at? I think the the focus on creating something meaningful and kind of that drive. So like we call it kind of grit. Like
Yeah.
we're trying to solve a hard challenge, and the reason we're here is because we want to solve a hard challenge and are going to have that intrinsic motivation to accomplish the goal. And so we spent a lot of time trying to measure that or assess that in some way. It's really tricky to do,
Yeah.
but I think it's the hunger. It's not I'm here kind of punching a clock. It's like I've signed up for something. I think this is meaningful, and we're willing to do whatever we need to accomplish that goal. And then I think the awareness of, hey, now we have a partner that brings skill sets and experience to the table. How do we get the most out of that combination? So I
Right.
think that's that willingness to learn,
Mm-hmm.
kind of plus that grit, internal motivation, like that. Those are the teams that we really like to work with.
And what size are those teams as well?
It depends. So we invest in companies kind of sub 15 million in ARR. So a typical deal would call it be 5 to 6 million in annualized recurring revenue.
Right.
And so depending on where that company is, that could be, what's amazing is, we've seen and we bought companies from founding teams of like three, like total
Right.
teams of three that have now gotten to 2.5, 3.5 million of ARR. But we also have companies that maybe they've got a presence in Eastern Europe or they're based in Eastern Europe. And, at 5 million of ARR, you might have a team of 90 and still be profitable. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's just a different model based on the company, where it's located and what they're trying to accomplish. Some companies you need much larger engineering teams. Some companies you can get away with smaller teams. For us, it's kind of the right team for the opportunity in front of us.
Right.
And big or small doesn't really make a huge difference. Like it's, do you
Yeah.
have that DNA within your company of, we're excited, we're trying to build something meaningful here. And that could be 15 people, it could be 50 or even 100.
Right. Right. Well, I have two last questions for you. One could go down a rabbit hole, but I think we can keep it focused.
All
But
right.
so the first of the last two questions, the first one is, where do you see Camber going with AI, and how may that change the PLG space?
Wow, it's a big question. We'll try to contain it. So we use machine learning and AI within our internal data platform, because one of the challenges that these big funnel companies are facing is you've got like one to many challenges. Like if one of our companies has 12,000 trial starts per month,
Mm,
and the sales team is probably a dozen people, and you can't put bodies against all of the potential leads, and you wouldn't be able to get them on the phone anyway to talk. So what we do is, this particular company, they've got probably got about 18,000 customers. And we collect 35,000 data points per customer per month. And so that's everything from, what channel they came from, what PPC ad they clicked on, what they did on their website, all the things that they did within your trial, everything that engaged with kind of the CRM. So we suck in data from all of these sources. So at that company, we're pulling in like probably 4 terabytes of data per month.
Wow.
And then we run machine learning and AI against that to understand the patterns of customers that have been successful in the past and customers that have ended up churning from the product. And then we score every customer every day on what we call an account health score. So like we're looking at, the machines are identifying the signals of success kind of every step in the funnel. So we're able to, look at a lead and the machine learning tells us this looks like a high value opportunity. Let's put a sales rep against it. And, then kind of down the funnel, we're able to do a pretty good job of predicting accounts that are likely to churn. And then we can trigger through the integration with, say, HubSpot, the customer success team to proactively reach out. So, our version of an operating system, within these companies is our data platform, and that is leveraging AI and machine learning to really identify the patterns that humans can't really process on customers that big. So that's how we use it internally, and we also use it to we from a sourcing standpoint, as we go out and look for these companies, we are buying, scraping data from probably it's probably over 20 sources at this point, and then we use machine learning to build kind of fit scores for Camber's model. And we identify whether they're product-led growth or not. And so we're trying to, there's hundreds of thousands of software companies out there, and we're trying to cull that to, the best fit for us. And so we use machine learning there as well. So, honestly, it's just going to creep into kind of every aspect of, how we operate, how SaaS operates. And I think it's, I'm not a big believer that, this generation of software companies is just going to get wiped out by a whole new generation of AI companies. I think it's much more likely that it creeps into all of these companies, and it's, everybody is more efficient. All of these companies are better targeted. So I think it's a net positive, and certainly there will be some industries where AI enables something that wasn't possible before, but I think it's already kind of creeping in. All of our companies are using AI in one way or another, and I think it will be very subtle. And a year from now, 2 years from now, if you were to really dig in, you'd be like, wow, like AI is handling a ton of our work.
Yeah. Well, once again, we agree on that. It's hard to find something for you and I to disagree on today. We didn't have any arguments. We didn't have any arguments. Yeah. So one last question. Yeah. One last chance. Maybe not on this one. I'm not sure. All right. So this is more of a scenario. So the scenario is you're trapped on a desert island the rest of your life. Now you have plenty of water, food, shelter, maybe even healthcare, everything that you need possible, except there's one thing that you don't have, and that's entertainment. There's no entertainment on this island. But fortunately for you, an old 80s boombox drifted ashore with endless batteries.
Oh boy.
But you only can select one cassette tape to listen to the rest of your life. Now it can be of any genre or time frame. I know I said cassette, but it could be a new album. But you only can choose one for the rest of your life. What are you going to choose?
Wow. There's so many different directions to take this. And the fact that it's forever, we've got batteries for eternity.
Yeah.
The first that jumped into my head was Led Zeppelin 4.
Oh.
And that was like the first CD that I bought that was just really like this this changes my life. Like I am a different person after listening to this. And so that was probably high school, which is a little bit later than Zeppelin was at their peak, but I listened to that a lot. So I could probably listen to it a whole bunch more.
So final answer, Led Zeppelin 4.
Yeah, final answer.
Again, we're not going to argue. That's a great choice. That's a great choice. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for joining me on the show.
That was super fun.
I look forward to future conversations.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jeff.